In 1996, Samson March started kindergarten. His first day was not a good one, not because of the typical first-day jitters, but because his mother had been away for a week. As his 6th birthday neared, he got more anxious. According to his teacher, Samson had not said goodbye to his mother. His father, attorney Perry March, told everyone that Janet was on vacation. He admitted that they had a disagreement before she left. It all started with his involvement in a $24,000 out-of-court settlement. It was related to a harassment incident at his former workplace, Bass, Berry & Sims. Janet had not known about it. She hastily packed her bags and departed. She left Perry with a list of tasks to complete during her absence, calling it Janet's 12-day vacation. Despite Perry's assurances to Janet's parents that she would return in time for Samson's birthday party, Janet failed to show up. This was strange because the argument took place on August 15th. If Janet had intended to go on a 12-day vacation, even in anger, she knew she had sent out invitations saying that the party would be held on August 25th. But Perry said she would be back on the 27th then. Perry tried to cover for Janet. He informed Samson's kindergarten friend's parents that she was in California visiting her brother. He blamed an ear infection as the reason for her prolonged stay. However, Janet never returned. This left Perry to wonder if she had disappeared or run off and left him with the responsibility of raising their children alone. The daughter of one of the richest lawyers in Nashville was missing. But what led to this strange disappearance? Why would Janet leave her 5-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter so abruptly? Had she been kidnapped? To help us understand this, we have to know more about Janet Gail Levine March and Perry Avram March. Janet Gail Levine was born with a silver spoon in her mouth in the year 1963. It might sound exaggerated, but her family were prominent Jewish lawyers settled in Nashville, Tennessee. Her father, Lawrence Levine, had built an insurance law practice that would go on to become Levine, Orr, and Gerashiati. Eldest of 2 siblings, Janet aspired to become an artist, which was unconventional given her father had worked so hard to provide her with a life of luxury. Her brother Mark became a lawyer like their father. But long before graduating University School of Nashville, her work was exhibited at the Jewish Community Center and various restaurants. Janet was called the eccentric visionary in her circle, described by her friends as a unique blend of sensitivity, nurturing instincts, and offbeat charm. She was affectionately labeled as the quintessential artist type. One notable example of her unconventional nature was her ownership of a patent for a collapsible baby chair. She designed it and knew it would work and sell, yet she never pursued its commercial potential. However, amidst her creative flair, Janet's close associates noted her tendency to become challenging during what they referred to as one of her moods. Janet pursued her art at the University of Michigan, and that is where lightning struck. Perry and Janet were both undergraduates at the University of Michigan. Janet's roommate, Stacy Goodman, introduced them. Janet missed their first date. The two had made a date to go to a synagogue together on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, but Janet overslept. She apologized profusely, and he would come to know her quirky, forgetful side. When they finally had a chance to spend time together, they became inseparable. Almost immediately, they started living together and would continue to do so until she went missing. Perry Avram March was born in 1961. His father, Arthur March, was a pharmacist and Romanian Jewish by heritage. His mother, Zipporah, was an Israeli immigrant. Originally, their surname was Markovich. Due to people misspelling the surname, they had to change it to March. Perry was the eldest of 3 siblings. His younger brother Ron and sister Kathy were barely toddlers when darkness took over their lives. When Perry was only 9 years old, his mother, Zipporah, passed away under mysterious circumstances. According to Arthur, she took Darvon, a pain reliever for a headache brought on by injury. She reacted severely to the medicine and went into anaphylactic shock. The certificate would go on to show that her condition was caused by an illegal substance overdose. Back in those days, traditional people found taking your own life to be an embarrassment. They would then misrepresent such incidents. It was a rumor in the community, but the truth never came out. Following the demise of their mother, Arthur moved his children to their summer home in Michigan. Perry attended La Lumiere School and was successful in both curricular activities as well as sports. He was a first-degree black belt in karate. Arthur retired from the Army with the rank of lieutenant colonel. Perry went off to the University of Michigan. His options were limited as his father had already retired. As an in-state student, his tuition would be lower. He majored in Asian studies and was known to have a slight temper. In fact, a woman came forward to claim Perry had struck her in the face when they were students at the University of Michigan, but Perry denied that claim. Upon graduating college, Perry started working as a broker for Oppenheimer and Company, an investment bank and finance company in Chicago, Illinois. About 6 months later, Janet joined him. They spent 2 years in Chicago while Perry worked as a management trainee at a subsidiary of Oppenheimer and Company. As the couple relocated, Janet started taking classes at the Art Institute, but Janet could not handle Chicago and wanted to go back home. She persuaded Perry to move to Nashville, where Perry could attend Vanderbilt Law School. She also convinced her father to pay for Perry's tuition at Vanderbilt University Law School. Larry Levine graciously agreed. Why would they pay so much for someone who was not family? When Janet introduced Perry to her parents, they knew he was the one for her. He was hardworking and ambitious, and they believed in him. Janet's mother was affectionate towards him and treated him like her own son. Perry excelled at law school and became a member of the Law Review. He was an ambitious competitor and hard negotiator. He prioritized financial success above all else. His classmates joked that he was the prime candidate for future indictment on securities fraud charges. Janet, always the romantic, grew impatient waiting for Perry to pop the question. Taking matters into her own hands, she proposed to him on a bended knee at Percy Warner Park. In 1987, Perry and Janet tied the knot in Nashville. Again, Janet's parents helped the newlyweds by giving them a down payment to buy a house in a nicer part of the city. It was a hillside house on 32nd Avenue, very posh for people still in school. Perry appreciated the assistance, especially since his father's financial situation had recently worsened. Arthur faced foreclosure on his home in Michigan by Lakeshore Bank and Trust in early 1986. His home on 42 Apache Trail in Michiana, Michigan was now bank property. Larry Levine, Perry's father-in-law, came to the rescue and purchased the property from the bank for $115,000. Larry graciously allowed Arthur to reside in the house rent-free. However, he later suggested that Arthur relocate to Nashville to be closer to Perry and Janet. Their love and generosity for their only daughter and son-in-law knew no bounds. Even when Arthur moved to Nashville, the Levines let him move into their home. They borrowed money to get up and running and were overall very warm and welcoming. As for his Michigan house, he did not know this, but Larry Levine had terminated his lease in early 1987. He termed it a failure to pay rent, and in 1988, he sold the house for $144,500. After graduating, Perry had some big job offers with cushy salaries. They were from two prestigious New York-based law firms, Cravath, Swaine & Moore, and Sherman & Sterling. Despite the allure, he opted to join Bass, Berry & Sims, an esteemed law firm in Nashville. His initial salary clocked in at $42,500. During the late 1980s, Bass, Berry & Sims underwent significant transformations. Pressure mounted from prominent Nashville Jewish figures, and the firm had to diversify its legal team. In 1988, Perry March and his Vanderbilt classmate Bennett Ross made history as the first Jewish attorneys to join the traditionally non-Jewish firm. Alongside them, Dale Wainwright, an African-American, and several female attorneys also joined Bass, Berry & Sims that year. This marked a big moment for the firm. Janet put her skills to use and became a children's book illustrator. In 1990, after 3 years of being married, their first child was born. They named him Samson. Unfortunately, back at work, Perry had some trouble. In the summer of 1991, a paralegal filed a complaint about a letter that showed up on her chair using steamy words. It read, "I am lost. I have read that when a person drowns, they fight savagely for air, and then when fate ultimately defeats them and they succumb, they say it feels so good, so comforting." It also spoke of the lack of intimacy in a marriage and how it becomes mundane after a few years. There was another letter about 2 weeks later, dated July 31st. It was just half a page long, and like the first letter, it was typewritten. The writer directed her to contact him in a very interesting way. She was to check out a certain book from the library. He would contact her thusly. According to the instructions in the letter, she removed a certain book. She signed a checkout card and left it in the space where the book had been filed. The writer became more excited. He did not realize it was a plot to simply catch him. On August 14th, he wrote her another letter, absolutely ecstatic, but by then the security firm had the culprit on tape. It was none other than Perry March. He was given an ultimatum. He either faced termination or he must resign. The paralegal went away on a paid vacation by the company, but when she returned, Perry was still working there. She kept bumping into him in the parking lot they both used. It made her uncomfortable when she needed to go to the bathroom or grab a coffee. Feeling upset about it all, she decided to quit the firm and get herself a lawyer. 2 weeks later, Perry left. The firm's boss said some nice things about him in a memo. Some lawyers thought the firm wanted to avoid trouble by handling Perry's departure quietly. They also thought it seemed suspicious that Perry left right after the paralegal quit. Perry had to compensate the woman for harassment. He kept the payment secret from Janet. He agreed to pay $25,000 over the next 4 years. The first $12,500 in monthly installments, and the last half as a lump sum at the end of that time. This was to avoid a harassment lawsuit against him and the firm. Perry had to join his father-in-law's firm, Levine, Orr, and Gerasciati. He represented local businesses such as the Platinum Club, Music City Mix Factory, and rich residents of Nashville. He even worked pro bono for the Jewish Community Center. This helped him to build a good reputation. Janet kept working on her art. She often ate lunch by herself at nearby restaurants while she drew on her sketch pad. She stayed distant from her friends and did not talk much about her relationship with them. Some of them thought she looked sad sometimes, almost depressed. In 1994, they got pregnant with a little girl. They chose to name her after Perry's late mother, Zipporah. After the birth, the couple was planning to make a 5,300 square foot house with a 4-acre open space in Forest Hills, their new home. As always, the Levines were paying for it. This was going to be Janet's dream house. She picked the name for the street. She first called it Chocolate Street, but had to change it to Blackberry Road after a neighbor complained. According to Perry, he was the one who took action in the marriage. Janet was the one with all the big ideas. The contractors recall her being difficult as they worked on the house she designed. To carry out and bring to life all the details she had designed could be difficult, but each time Janet would throw a fit. Contractors were used to rich clients being a little specific about details, so they did not complain. But they knew each time she got in a mood, it was Perry who stepped up and smoothed things over. Janet had a list of what she would achieve in life: a successful career, husband, house, and kids. One by one, it all came true. But that was all on the surface. Behind closed doors, there was trouble in paradise. The charming French-style house was meant to fulfill Janet's dreams, but her marriage had not been truly happy for a while. Janet did not trust Perry because he did not handle their money well. Worried Janet might file for divorce, the Levines made sure all of her property was in her name. Perry had confessed to Carolyn, Janet's mother, that he and Janet were facing marital problems. Shortly afterward, they began seeing a marriage counselor. The following year, 1996, their marriage was still on the rocks, so to speak. The day before she disappeared, August 14th, the children's nanny noticed that Janet was quiet and aloof instead of her usual talkative self. She was working on her computer and kept her office door closed, which was not like her at all. The following day, August 15th, Janet's friends saw that she was preoccupied and seemed almost afraid of Perry. The couple had an appointment to meet a divorce lawyer on August 16th. 2 carpenters were carrying out warranty work that day for about an hour, checking everything. Janet watched them closely while Perry played with the children, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. That night, Perry and Janet had an argument that was the end of their relationship. Perry knew they were tired of fighting. The kids were in bed, so they had no idea what went on. According to Perry, his wife was furious and decided she had had enough. They went on the front porch to keep away from earshot, and everything came out. At around 8 p.m., Perry suggested he should stay at a hotel for the night to give Janet space. She refused. Instead, she said she was going on a short vacation to a place she would not tell him about. According to Perry, she packed some clothes into 2 bags and a suitcase. She then took her gray Volvo 850 along with her passport, $15,000 in cash, and a bag of marijuana. She was going away for 12 days and prepared a list of chores for him to do. 12 days is oddly specific, especially since her son's 6th birthday was within 10 days. But she said she would be in time for his birthday. Perry did not know when the birthday party was planned, but his wife had already given out the invitations. Around midnight, he called the Levines to talk about the recent fight. Her parents were used to her tempers and advised him to let her cool off. But the following morning, Janet did not return. Her parents called her friends, called hotels, but she was not registered anywhere. This was worrisome. Together with Perry, they looked at parking areas, went to the airport, and drove around. Around 10 o'clock, Marissa Moody and her 6-year-old son arrived at Janet and Perry's house. Samson and Sephora seemed happy and healthy. On that particular Friday morning, Marissa felt ignored. She and Janet had planned for their sons to play together that day, but when they arrived, nobody was around to greet them. Sephora was playing with the nanny outside. Samson let them in, and they hung out in the kitchen. Samson told Marissa that his mom was not home, but his dad was upstairs working. Marissa did not see Perry, but got a message from Samson that it was okay to stay and play. She thought Perry was just ignoring her, as usual. Marissa left her son to play and went home. The only strange thing Marissa noticed was a big rug, which did not fit with the rest of the house's simple style. When she came back later to pick up her son, the rug was gone. By Sunday night, August 17th, Carolyn Levine started getting concerned. Janet had never been away from her children for so long without saying anything. She thought about calling the police, but Perry and his brother Ron, who had come to help, convinced the Levines to wait until the 12-day period was over. Samson's 6th birthday went ahead on August 25th as scheduled. Her family knew people would ask questions. Perry and the Levines decided to tell the party guests that Janet was in California visiting her brother Mark. They made up a story that Janet could not fly back home due to an ear infection. The police were not told until August 29th, 2 weeks after Janet disappeared. Janet's brother Mark had come to Nashville by this time. Shortly after the report was made, an MNPD police car came to the Levines' house. Perry, who was also there, became so anxious at the sight. It took him several tries to stand up from his chair due to his uncontrollable shaking. He then asked Mark to call his brother Ron. On September 7th, Janet's Volvo was discovered parked at Bricksworth apartment complex on Harding Road. The complex is about 5 miles away from her house. Most of the items Perry claimed she had taken were left inside. The detective who examined the Volvo found dust and pollen on the exterior. They indicated it had been unused for some time. Inside, police found Janet's purse with her identification, credit cards, passport, and a small amount of cash. Also, a packed suitcase and a toiletry bag. However, the gray suitcase Perry said Janet had taken was missing from the vehicle. The front passenger seat was pushed back, while the driver's seat was pushed forward. Janet's white sandals were carefully positioned on the floor, suggesting they were not discarded in haste. Investigators also noted that Janet's suitcase lacked certain items. There were no bras, toothpaste, or a hairbrush, which a woman would typically pack. On the same day, a private investigator hired by the Levines spoke to Perry, who referred to Janet in the past tense. Perry later angrily demanded a list of everyone the investigator had spoken to regarding Janet's car. 5 days later, the MNPD searched Perry's Jeep and found hair and fiber evidence in the back seat. During a police interview on September 10th, Perry appeared nervous and acknowledged his rights as an attorney. He provided a handwritten statement detailing his account of the events on August 15th and the list of tasks he had to do. This is when Carolyn Levine, Janet's mother, realized she had seen the exact same list on a yellow notepad, but scribbled in Perry's handwriting. Whereas the list Perry showed everyone was typewritten, which was not like Janet at all. Janet's mother mentioned that Janet typically either wrote her lists by hand or dictated them to others, rather than using a computer to print them out. When she did write, Janet exclusively used lowercase letters, whereas her list to Perry used capital letters. Janet usually dated her lists at the top of the page, while Perry's list was dated at the bottom. This was more his common practice. Multiple witnesses informed the police that Perry March had been seen with other women during the months leading up to Janet's disappearance. One witness reported seeing Perry leaving Belcourt Cinema arm in arm with an attractive blonde. Another witness claimed to have observed Perry having an intimate dinner with a brunette at Boundary Restaurant. Interestingly, Janet and her friends had dined at the same restaurant for a girls' night out on a Tuesday, just before she vanished. During a weekend in mid-September, Perry took the children to Chicago to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with his family. His father, Arthur, did not join them due to financial reasons. Meanwhile, the MNPD obtained a search warrant for the March house. They notified Perry's lawyer on September 16th of their plans to execute it the next day. When they searched the house, they found that the computer's hard drive had been forcibly removed and could not be located. Perry was informed in advance that they wanted to check the hard drive. The police continued investigating Perry's activities since Janet's disappearance. A resident who worked for an airline told the police that he had returned from work around 1 a.m. on August 16th and seen a surprised Perry walking a mountain bike past him. They also discovered that on August 21st, almost a week after she went missing, Perry had visited a local tire store. He purchased new tires for his Jeep, despite the existing ones being in excellent condition. Perry claimed he wanted a different brand. Records also revealed that Janet typically used a Visa credit card before her disappearance, while Perry primarily used a MasterCard. However, Janet had not used either card since she disappeared, while Perry had used both. The Levines were furious with him. Larry Levine was adamant that Perry had done something to his daughter. Perry had to move to a $3,000 a month rented home in the North Chicago suburb of Wilmette. He took most of his and Janet's belongings. Andrew Sachs, a friend who helped him pack, noticed Perry seemed frustrated. Perry was angry towards the Levines and the Nashville police. Andrew advised Perry not to contact them anymore. Diane, a friend of Janet's, mentioned a disturbing conversation. Perry asked her what she would say if he told her he had put Janet's body in her car, left with the kids at home, and then came back as if nothing had happened. According to phone records, Perry called his brother Ron in Wilmette at 9:11 p.m. on the night of August 15th. They talked for 3 minutes. Then, at 9:14 p.m., Perry called his sister Kathy at her boyfriend's house in New Buffalo, Michigan. Their conversation lasted 4 minutes. Detectives think these calls were Perry's first attempts to hide a dark reality, that he had accidentally taken his wife's life. However, Perry says he just called his siblings to tell them that Janet had left him and the kids. Ron's wife Amy said they were getting ready for bed when Perry called. She confirmed Ron talked about Janet leaving and added that she scolded him for not being more supportive of his brother. Kathy March and her boyfriend Lee Bridewich both backed up Perry's version of the events. After Perry finished talking to his sister at 9:18 p.m., the police thought he may have hidden Janet's body in the woods or the basement of their house. Then, they believe he packed Janet's bags, put them in her Volvo, and drove the car to the Bricksworth apartment complex. According to the police, he left the car there and either jogged or rode a mountain bike the 5 miles back home. Meanwhile, the police think Perry's 2 kids were sleeping upstairs. The Levine's wrath was too much for Perry and he had to go. He was even disbarred and had to stop practicing law. There were suits filed for visitation rights and many disputes, but Perry knew he had to move out of their powerful reach. So he went to Mexico to stay with his father, who had moved there a few years back. In May 2000, the Levines visited Ajijic, Mexico, to demand visitation rights with the children, which Perry refused. They returned a month later with a Mexican court order, leading to Perry's arrest on visa violation charges. Despite later dropping the charges, the Levines took the children from school and flew them back to Nashville. They sought permanent custody, believing they acted legally, while Perry considered it abduction. Tennessee lawyers took Perry's case pro bono, invoking the International Child Abduction Remedies Act. The Levines argued they had rightful custody under a visitation order and claimed the children's home was not in Mexico. They also cited risks and human rights concerns. The Levines believed Perry took the life of their daughter and filed a civil suit against him. They did not claim that the children witnessed it or that they had been harmed in his care. Perry's outstanding contempt citations did not meet the criteria to bar his petition as a fugitive. Thus, the children had to be returned to Perry after the 39 days. The Levines disputed every aspect, while Perry argued they had no standing. The judge criticized the Levines for surpassing the authority of the Mexican court order and incurring kidnapping charges in Mexico. After the children returned to him, Perry settled in Mexico, working as a business advisor, and got remarried. Within a week of settling down, Perry married a local woman, Carmen Rojas. In 2003, he won another legal victory against the Levines when the Tennessee Court of Appeals overturned the wrongful demise judgment. The court found that the Levines offered no new evidence of Perry's involvement in Janet's demise. Their delay in amending the claim was undue. Although Perry's behavior did not warrant a default judgment, the court did not dismiss the wrongful claim on its merits. One judge dissented, arguing that the issue of Janet's possible slaying had been part of the proceedings from the start. In April 2006, Perry was found guilty of embezzling $23,000 from his father-in-law's firm. This happened over 2 years before Janet disappeared. 2 months later, he was convicted of conspiracy regarding the disappearance of his wife. Despite civil cases ruling in Perry's favor, the MNPD reopened Janet's case. Perry's business dealings in Mexico led to accusations of fraud against him. In 2001, he allegedly threatened a lawyer and client there. Subsequently, Perry was indicted on charges of slaying his wife, evidence tampering, and abuse of a corpse. All of this was based on evidence presented to a grand jury. He was arrested in August 2005 and returned to Nashville, where he confessed to some details of the case. But he maintained his innocence. Perry tried to solicit and recruit another inmate, Russell Farris, to get rid of his in-laws for good. In return, he would post Russell's $3,000 bond bail, and then he must hide in Mexico. His father, Arthur, would assist him with a place to stay. Perry did not know that Russell was working with the police. He contacted Arthur and he explained to Russell how he must take the Levines' life. The older man told him the right time of day to go to the Levines, where to get a gun, what kind of gun to use, to wear surgical gloves the whole time, and how to get to Ajijic afterwards. Another inmate, Cornelius King, testified that Perry confessed to hitting Janet with a wrench during an argument and disposing of her body. Reno Martin had a cell next door to Perry. He recalled that one day Perry had returned from one of the child custody hearings visibly agitated. Upset by having to deal with the Levines again, Perry exclaimed, "It should have been them that he had taken care of instead of then suddenly stopped himself. Martin recalled that Perry looked pale afterwards. After a week-long trial, Perry was found guilty on all charges, 10 years after Janet's alleged slaying. Perry received a 56-year prison sentence, with concurrent terms for theft and conspiracy to slay his in-laws, followed by a consecutive sentence for taking the life of Janet March. Arthur March was also arrested for assisting in the conspiracy to slay the Levines. To lessen his sentence, he agreed to testify against his son. He then said that Perry asked him to assist in disposing of Janet's body after an accident happened. And then he did. He wanted to help his son. He was unable to recall exactly where they had disposed of the body, and it has never been found. Perry's father's plea bargain was rejected, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, only 3 months later, Arthur passed away. After Perry's conviction, the Levines campaigned for changes in Tennessee law. This resulted in expanded grandparent visitation rights and termination of parental custody in cases of culpability for the other parent's demise. Janet was honored with an art gallery at Nashville's Gordon Jewish Community Center. Perry maintains his innocence to this day while he is behind bars. There was certainly enough evidence and testimony to put him away.